Well, good morning, everyone. We've had a little hiatus, haven't we? So with New Year's and Christmas and whatnot, so we're back in the saddle and we're making our way through Joshua. Maybe we should say back on the donkey because that was really more of the animal the Israelites rode rather than horses. So we're making our way through Joshua, and last 2-3 weeks ago. So Joshua's, of course, General Joshua, he's the leader of the Israelites, and he's leading them on a series of victories for the most part. There have been some setbacks when people haven't followed God's instructions. And so now we're in chapter 9. So the surrounding people are kind of saying, well, how do we deal with this new kid on the block? He seems to be kind of a powerful dude, and what are we going to do? So, and that's what we're going to find out in chapter 9. So, it's kind of like in the early 1900s, right? There was kind of a big union movement in America. Well, why did they band together in a union? Well, because individually, often workers felt they had no power, but together. So there's a little bit of a unionization, if we want to use that as an analogy, that's going to take place. Okay? And so second para in the intro, as the tales of Israel's victory spread, the neighboring kingdoms trembled. The first two verses of Joshua chapter 9 introduce us to a coalition of kings who unite against Israel. So, let's see what the deal is. Joshua 9, verses 1 and 2. As soon as all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and in the lowland all along the coast of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, a lot of folks, right? Jebusites heard of this. They gathered together as one fight against Joshua and Israel. So what is one thing to bring together either maybe nations who may be ambivalent toward one another, or maybe even at odds, is what? A perceived greater enemy, right? I mean, so with whom did we ally against Nazi Germany in World War II? The Soviet Union, right? I mean, really? Yeah, because why? Well, Nazi Germany was a greater threat. Right? So yeah, and so this is something similar. So these guys are saying, well, Israel's a greater threat. We better put aside our petty differences, or, right? It's like that snake in our nation's history. Divided we die, and so it's the whole sort of thing that we need to be united and not cut up into all these little separate pieces. Okay, so what prompted the kings to unite is that very thing. The threat of Israel as they perceive it. And it makes sense because you'd go, well, they shouldn't be this powerful. And yet they seem to be having a string of victories that don't quite make sense. Okay? So, gathered together, that just, it just sounds kind of nonchalant, but in the Hebrew, it's a little more urgent. So they're sensing the situation, and so there is some urgency to them getting together in this coalition. All right. Well, let's continue on because other things also take place, not just a coalition. So, verses 3 through 6. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho, and I'm going to say Ai. They on their part acted with cunning and went and made ready provisions and took worn out sacks for their donkeys and wineskins worn out and torn and mended with worn out patched sandals on their feet and worn out clothes. Notice the repetition, right? So this is emphasizing kind of their ruse, right? They're trying to look like something they are not. Okay, and why would Israel know otherwise? Israel hasn't been in the land that long. They've been away for 400 years, right? So a lot changes in 400 years, right? And their provisions were dry and crumbly. And they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal and said to him and the men of Israel, "We have come from a distant country, so now make a covenant with us." So, what are they trying to do? They want an alliance, don't they? But they're doing it under false pretenses, right? They're pretending to be a people, a nation they are not. That, oh, we came from far away. So in other words, we're kind of like you. Let's band together, right? So, and then they go, well, once there's this agreement, are they going to break it because they realize that we were duplicitous? Well, maybe not, but they might go, well, a little bit, but still, we made an agreement, so. But who's to say? But so these guys, they're not banding together, but they're deciding to ally with them, right? So what would this be the equivalent in World War II, if you think about that? So what's that section of France that was, right? It was initially Vichy France, right? And he was a World War I hero. And so he was well respected. And I actually think that he thought he was doing the right thing. But, you wrestle with the snake. So he misjudged, right? So he was operating in an old world of honor and thinking and not. So it ended up being a really bad deal for him. But so in a sense, yeah, it's kind of like Vichy France. These guys, well, we're going to ally with these guys who would otherwise be our enemy. So they don't join the coalition. They said, well, let's just be friends with these guys that way. So what does that makes them think that either this coalition will not succeed, or there might be a huge loss of life, so it'd be easier just to make a treaty with Israel. Okay? So, but they're being sneaky. So, okay, are we ready to press on? Because what's going to happen? I think we would say null and void because you made it under false pretenses. Okay, 7 through 15. But the men of Israel said to the Hivites, "Perhaps you live among us, then how can we make a covenant with you?" They said to Joshua, "We are your servants." And Joshua said to them, "Who are you, and where do you come from?" They said to him, "From a very distant country your servants have come, because of the name of the Lord your God." Man, now it seems to be getting deep, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, this sounds like sometimes when people who come and they need assistance and they say a whole bunch of stuff they think the pastor wants to hear, right? They're desperate and they might need help, but they're lying through their teeth, right? "For we have heard a report of him and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon the king of Heshbon, and to Og of Bashan." Oh boy, tough names. I'm glad Og is a weird name. That one hasn't survived, has it? So, Og, king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country said to us, "Take provisions in your hands for the journey and go to meet them and say to them, 'We are your servants. Come now, make a covenant with us.'" Okay, let's just stop right here. Let's say you think they really might be from somewhere else, right? Why would somebody travel from far away to try to make an agreement with the Israelites when they said they're from another place, right? So in other words, the Israelites aren't, there's no reason why the Israelites are going to clash with these guys if they're from far away, right? So the story falls apart under scrutiny because it doesn't make sense to travel to make an alliance. I think it would make sense if Israel ends up controlling a larger area and then, it looks like these guys are, they have expansionist plans. But right now, this doesn't make any sense at all that someone would do this, right? So we've heard all this about you, but still, that's over there, and we're from over here. I want to kind of use that. So yeah, it kind of falls apart. Here is our bread. It was still warm when we took it from our houses as our food for the journey on the day we set out to come to you. But now, behold, it is dry and crumbly. So how many days did they journey? Right? Dry and crumbly? These wineskins were new when we filled them, and behold, they have burst. Which means what? Don't. Yeah. So this is, this has been what, a week, right? So I don't know. Seems fishy to me. Okay. And these garments and sandals of ours are worn out from the very long journey. So the men took some of their provisions, but did not ask counsel from the Lord. And Joshua made peace with them and made a covenant with them to let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore to them. Now notice that little insertion in the text. Why would that be in there? Did you catch it? But they did not do what? Yeah, in other words, what does God think, right? So, in a sense, God is right. He's directing the agenda here. And he doesn't always, he's not every day popping up to Joshua, right? But he has come to him at particular moments and made his will known. So, and so this is put in the text to let us know that they should have, instead of just doing this on their own, they should, because we know what God has commanded us to do, but they're just going, but this has nothing to do with what God commanded, because these guys are far away, right? So they'd been hornswoggled. Is that a real word? Hornswoggled?
It is now.
Yeah. That's probably some old medieval English word that has somehow continued on. You hornswoggler. Okay. All right. So a covenant born from deceit. So that's the bottom of page 1, right? And the question, what mistake did Israel make in this interaction? They failed to consult God before making the pact with the Gibeonites. Hence the Gibeonite gambit. Well, do you think that this deception will be forever hidden? No. Things like this usually come out. Something will make known that, you aren't from wherever it is. So let's read on. Then what will Joshua and the Israelites do? 16 through 21. At the end of 3 days after they had made a covenant with them, they heard that they were their neighbors. Fancy that. Okay. And they lived among them. They go, oh man, that's what happens when you don't have the local intel, right? That's why it's always good to have folks who are local with you. And the people of Israel set out and reached their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, Chephirah, Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. But the people of Israel did not attack them because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel. Oh, now what do we do? So they're saying, we swore by our God, this is not just an earthly agreement. Oh, no. Okay. Then all the congregation murmured against the leaders. Okay, but I'm sorry, I just find this funny. But all the leaders said to all the congregation, we have sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we may not touch them. This we will do to them. Let them live, lest wrath be upon us because of the oath that we swore to them. So now they're in a pickle because God said, you need to conquer the land. You need it to be yours. And no divided loyalties, okay? But now we also swore an oath by the same God that we have a pact with these people, we won't attack them. So now there's this contradiction. Which one should hold sway? What do you guys think? Well, which one originated from God and which one originated from man? See? So God's directive said you need to conquer the land and not be a people divided. What came from man is, oh, okay, well, let's make an agreement with them. Now they did it, right? They made this covenant with the Gibeonites using an oath, swearing an oath to God. But they're the ones who originated this, not God. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to figure out how to get out of the pickle that they created. Right? So as the saying goes, you made your bed, now you have to sleep in it. I think that's how it goes. Okay, so anyways, now I lost my spot where we were. Okay, blah, 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 blah. So they're not going to do it. Verse 21, and the leader said to them, let them live. So they became cutters of wood and drawers of water for all the congregation, just as the leaders had said of them. So what are they doing right now? Yeah, well, they're not slaves, but they're common laborers. Yeah, so they're... Yeah. So they're... Yeah, if you want to live, right? I guess it's better than dying. But still, right? This is kind of a makeshift hodgepodge, isn't it? Yeah. So they're doing this in a way to placate the people, aren't they? Because why are the people? Whoa, nothing new under the sun. Okay. So, and murmured signifies a deep felt communal discontent reflecting the intensity of the Israelites' dismay. That's the same word that, when Israel's wandering through the wilderness and they murmur against God and Moses, same word, right? And so it's not like outright rebellion, but it's significant discontent, and it's, just kind of right underneath the surface, ready to break through. You could say that, but it's still contained.
You really can't blame them. They just crossed a river with the water standing still. They took down a city. They didn't take down a city because somebody built
Right.
a small little roof.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the leaders have said,
Yeah.
well, he told us to conquer everything and kill everyone, but...
Yeah. You can kind of see.
I would be going, have you lost your...
Yeah. Hey, we're supposed to be following the rules, and you're our leaders, and you're not. Well, we were kind of, we were duped. Oh, man. This is too good. I mean, see, so this is the stuff that I find funny, but because this is the stuff that if you wanted to write a glorious sort of history, where you leave out the little bits that make you look bad, this wouldn't be in there, right? So this is the stuff that is a little embarrassing, and you would either leave it in a footnote or not include it, and yet it's in here. So these are those things that really say, this is the truth, warts and all. See, so.
In our footnotes, 18 and to 20, it does say that in 2 Samuel, Saul broke the oath by attacking the Gibeonites in the wrath of God.
I should have read the footnotes. Oh, wow. Yeah. So, I didn't think that this would really hold that long. Because I thought, somehow this, because it was established as a ruse, but okay. Wow. Interesting stuff. Okay. So let's continue. So so they're kind of, okay, well, so we're going to use these guys as they're going to do a lot of the grunt work for us. Okay. So, I guess, well, yeah, it's a little easier. I don't have to fetch water all the time. These guys are doing it for me now. So, we don't have to worry about that stuff, do we? But can you imagine if you had to actually go fetch your water? Or you wouldn't have any? I mean, stuff like that was really important. So, now we just turn on the tap and we're happy. Okay, so let's continue on. Verses 22 through 27. So, still, these guys are going to have to say, hey, what's happening here? You duped us. Okay. So Joshua summoned them. Who? The Gibeonites. The deceiver of deceivers. Okay. And he said to them, why did you deceive us? Because you're stupid. Saying, we are very far from you when you dwell among us. Now, therefore, you are cursed, and some of you shall never be anything but servants, cutters of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. So he's saying, so what is Joshua doing? He's saying, well, because of the ruse, well, that was his way of handling the situation, right? Well, I have to honor the covenant, but you guys are all you're going to be doing all the hard labor, okay? They answered Joshua, because it was told to your servants for a certainty that the Lord your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. So we feared greatly for our lives because of you and did this thing. Is that weird? They're like, well, we don't want to fight them, but we don't want to move. So now you're in a predicament, right? So, I mean, we could say an analogy might be if you live in a neighborhood and you bought the home, but now it's gone south and it's become a violent place. Let's say you're in Chicago, right? Oh, it used to be an old Italian neighborhood. Not anymore, right? Now it's murder and mayhem. And so, should you sell your home and leave? I probably would. But some people, well, nope. So, but you could, so, yeah, there you have it, okay? And now behold, we are in your hand. Whatever seems good and right in your sight to do so, do it. So in other words, we're okay because, well, at least this generation, right? Later generations may go, hey, what's the deal with this? But, yeah. So he did this to them and delivered them out of the hand of the people of Israel, and they did not kill them. But Joshua made them that day cutters of wood. Notice the repetition, right? So this is what, like the third time this is repeated? So here again, this is what, for emphasis, right? So this lets us know that Joshua feels frustrated. He feels, well, I can't break the covenant, but I am not happy, and I wish I never made it. But what else can I do? So this is his workaround, and it's repeated several times to kind of let us know that this is what's going on. Okay? But Joshua made them that day cutters of wood and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord to this day in the place that he should choose. Okay? So there it is. So when this was written, that was still in place. You had a people who were still serving the people of Israel. So, yeah. Yeah. In our nation, that wouldn't go over too well, would it? Because we would say, well, it's one thing if a group of people happen to be poor, but it's another thing if they're institutionally that way. See? So we're against the institution being against, suppressing someone. But, if you happen to be poor because of the choices you made, oh, well, I'm sorry. Wish you weren't, but, right? So, I mean, that's kind of at least traditionally how we've lived and handled things. Okay? So there it is. So the Gibeonites, they're not the people of Israel, but, yeah, they're affiliated with them. Of course, what we will know is that there will be some intermarrying and some will become Jewish. I mean, that always happens. It's part of the human dynamic. It cannot be otherwise, right? And we know this happens because even throughout Israel's history, when God says, well, you are a separate and holy people, and yet it was violated all the time. So, yeah. So, I mean, all the guys are for separate and holy until they see a pretty woman who's from another group of people. All right. Are we ready to move on? Okay. Well, let's bottom of page 2, church history interpretations. I always like to throw in a couple things if I come across something. So Augustine in his City of God. So if you ever read Augustine, so he interprets the Gibeonites' deception as a symbol of the Gentiles' incorporation into God's covenant community. Kind of weird, interesting how he does that, because the Gentiles, even though God's original plan was for the whole world, still the Gentiles are what? They're outsiders. And so here he's saying we can kind of see a foreshadowing of outsiders being brought in. Oh, okay. So, yeah. Anyways, there you have it. So Augustine, his stuff's, his stuff's fun. I'll just share with you a little bit because he gets into kind of a little bit of the human nature. So he talks about because his mother was Monica and was a Christian and prayed for him, but he was some ruffian, just, typical teenage kid growing up, at least I think. And so he was talking about he and his buddies that they would go into a vineyard and steal apples just for the fun of it, to get the heart pumping and not get caught. But they didn't want to eat the apples, so they would just throw them away. And so he was just talking about how that he, when he would use that, he would just say, in a sense, how destructive sin is. Because here it was, doing all this stuff right? And it was just for, the sinful enjoyment of it. So, anyways. So, yeah. And his mother, Monica, wow, you have to, yeah. Anyway, let's continue on, okay? So now we're moving into chapter 10. There was some other stuff I thought I might bring up. But I thought, no, I don't want to do that. But so, verses 1 through 5. So now we're all going to know what happens here, okay, in this chapter, because that's one of the most famous incidents in the book of Joshua, okay, other than the fall of Jericho. Okay, verses 1 through 5. As soon as Adonizedek, so Zedek is kind of like a king, king of Jerusalem, heard how Joshua had captured Ai and devoted it to destruction, doing to Ai and its king as he had done to Jericho and its king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them. So all that introductory clause, right? He feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were warriors. Isn't it cool how this stuff kind of unfolds? Right? Wow. So what is Jerusalem? Because Jerusalem is not under Israel control now, is it? No. Remember? So you remember a long time ago the story of Melchizedek? Right? And that was when Jerusalem was Salem? Right? So this is Adonizedek of Jerusalem. Okay? So Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent to Hoham, king of Hebron, to Piram, king of Jarmuth, to Japhia, king of Lachish, and Debir, king of Eglon, saying, "Wow, this is harder than the whole kind of Lord of the Rings thing here going on with the names. Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the people of Israel." Okay, what's going on here? We can look at this strategically, our military. Let's look at it emotionally, right? So we have we have 2 dogs, right? Now one is really old, he's 15, he's not doing too well, and the other one's a few years younger, a lot healthier. But there have been times, so Bings is really, he kind of adopted me, and August is the old one who adopted Sherry. Well, sometimes if Bings is doing something that he shouldn't be doing, and I'll chastise him. And then he'll bite August on the ear. Like, what? Right? What? So emotionally, he's frustrated, but I can't attack my human. So he goes and bites the other dog. That's emotionally what these guys are doing. You can say all the other stuff, but they're like, so what is this? Using Barney Fife, whatever. They have to nip this in the bud. We can't let this happen because, we have a few more defections, then the whole place will all fall. So so in other words, they see this in order to preserve a coalition and to keep other people from defecting. We need to take care of this. That's so they need to, in a sense, turn on their own to kind of keep everybody together, right? So this is the machine gunner in World War I at the end of the trench. If anybody tries to run away, you shoot him, right? So that way you'll run and be killed by enemy machine gun fire instead of from your own guy. So it's all part of that same kind of thing, okay? So yeah. So we kind of understand this, right? I mean, just the whole kind of, you have to set the tone we can't have any more defections. And the thing is, this lets us know that the people of Gibeon were actually, they were not just some no-name, useless group of people. They were a military force of some significance. And they kind of looked at everything and just said, it's not worth it. So we're not going to win. And so they took their gamble and they did what they decided to do. But the other people are not happy. Okay? 6 through 8. Well, what's going to happen? And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, do not relax your hand from your servants. Oh, look at that. Remember the agreement we made? Time to honor it, buddy. Oh boy. Joshua will be none too pleased. Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come to us quickly and save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, and he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. Okay, so what has God done? Because they did this agreement apart from God, swearing an oath to God, and so God is honoring it. Okay, so so don't worry, I have your back. So I wonder what Joshua was thinking at this time. Well, it wasn't exactly right. So again, what does this kind of tell us? Right? It kind of says God gives a lot more forgiveness than he has to, or that we deserve. So there he is. Yeah. So it's going to be okay. So on page 3, God promises Joshua that he has delivered the enemies into Israel's hands, and not one of them will be able to stand against them. And do not fear Yahweh. This echoes the Old Testament as a divine reassurance in times of strife. So, that word is used a lot in the Old Testament, and it's also used here. So when you kind of look at it overall, you go, okay. This is not a singular time when this do not fear, right? So God is with you. Okay. So, now this is the thing that we've all heard about in the Bible stories when we were kids, right? So this is 9 through 15. But first I must find it. Okay. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel. So if you do that all night and then you get ready to attack them, that could be good or bad, right? You have the element of surprise. What's the negative part? You're tired, right? Yeah. And that also includes the leadership. So, because if the military leadership is tired, they may not make the right choices. So this could be either good or bad. But so they come upon them and they surprise them. Aha. So at least they have the element of surprise on their side. Okay. So they weren't expecting this. Okay. But there's more to this. Okay. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel. So the surprise, what does God do with the surprise? He uses that, and what does he do? So he takes the anxiety they already have and amplifies it. And when this happens and your soldiers lose their discipline, what happens? Chaos. Unless you're able to regroup your troops, usually it's a huge defeat. Because everyone, you have to fight in a coordinated fashion to be effective, not just, oh, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, a panicked retreat, it's better to fight than have it, because in a panicked retreat, there's almost no hope at all. Okay? So the Lord threw them into a panic for Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by the way of the ascent to Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. In other words, so this is they're getting away, right? They're traveling some distance. And as they fled before Israel while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. Now, listen, get this. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. So, write this little aside. You can go, oh, well, is this hyperbole? Is it actual fact? Is it? The thing is, what is this telling us? It's telling us, why are the Israelites successful? Because of God's intervention. Yeah. So God's intervention is throughout all of this. But he's using the normal things that exist, well, at least to some degree, right? And here it is. But this lets us know that despite everything Joshua's doing and whatever all the armies are doing, why will Israel victor?
God is in control.
Because of God. And that's the point that this is making. Okay? This is letting us know. And then, of course, what happens next will also let us know the reason why the Israelites will triumph is because of God. Okay? So, here we go. At that time, Joshua spoke to the Lord in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jashar? Okay. Which we don't have. Okay. As far as I know, because I've never been able to find it. Okay? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Right? And you're going to have naysayers all over the place. Well, if God really stopped the earth, all this stuff would have happened, right? But if God is powerful enough to stop the rotation of the earth, what else is he powerful enough to do? Yeah! Hello! I mean, and if God isn't powerful enough to do this, right, then it didn't happen. But here, right, all of this is testifying that God is the reason why the Israelites succeed. And that's the lesson that they should take. So, and you have, so he amplifies the anxiety and the fear in the enemy. Well, okay, well that could be explained away. What are you going to explain away? Oh, and then there was this giant crazy rain of hailstones that, well, it could be. And then the sun stood still. Oh, well, there's no explaining that away, right? So each thing that happens shows that God is the reason why they are winning, okay? And that's so you can see the progression. These things had to happen. Otherwise, the progression of it makes no sense, right? So all of this is a lesson to Joshua and the people of Israel. Who is your God? And let's follow him. Why would I want to follow anybody else when this is our God, right? So how do we understand this in the new covenant, right? Because what? Well, I don't like my neighbor. Will God hold the sun still in the sky while I go beat him up? No, right? So, so this, so in the new covenant, this shows us a picture of what? Of a whole panoply of stuff going on that we can't see, right? And so this is the whole stuff when you read in Revelation about, God throwing the angel down and this whole huge battle, and Paul kind of speaks of it too, that this whole kind of spiritual warfare that we can't see, right? Well, in a sense, this kind of gives us a picture of what we can't see, right? So we look at it this as historical stuff, because it is, but if we only stop there, then we fail to see the real value of it, right? Because the real value of it, well, what does this tell us about God, and what is he doing with our real enemy? See, my neighbor, the guy I don't get along with, he's not my real enemy. Sin, death, and Satan are. Okay? And those are the enemies our God contends with. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? So yeah, this is just, but so, read this kind of understanding what God is doing here. Okay? The point is not, in other words, the point is not that God, in other words, it doesn't stop with God holding the sun in the sky so Israel could win, right? So if we stop there, then we miss it, okay? It's like the whole, it's like the sign of Jonah, right? Jesus brings that up. Well, if it's only about the guy, some giant fish or whale that swallowed a guy and belched him up, then you miss it. Mm-hmm. Yes. What's the problem with that?
People won't accept it.
Well, it doesn't look like it. Because we look around, it's like murder and mayhem. Like the Italian family living in Chicago, then the whole neighborhood's gone to pot. Right? You're going, well, God's not in control. Those gang members are. Right? And so, so how is he in control? Right? And so this is this is the entire motif of God working through weakness, of God turning things to our eternal good. How could he turn things to our eternal good? Because bad things happen. And yet God can use those. Okay? And does. Okay? So we want to recognize God is in control, but we don't want to see him like a mighty monarch as an earthly ruler. Okay? Not control in that way. And Epiphany is the perfect time for that. Because the wise men, they go to see the king, and what does he look like? He's not in control. He's just some powerful... Now, when they go visit him, he's not in the manger then. This is several months to up to 2 years later. We don't know the exact timeline. But, so he's not in the manger, but he's some regular dude, looking kid, who's poor, right? And yet, he's God's king. See? And you go, well, how can that be? He doesn't even look that way. But that shows us how God works, right? So he works through ways that often don't seem to be the case. And then and when we see that he does something wild and crazy, well, he's pulling back the veil just a little bit for us. Okay? All right. Let's press on. Okay? Okay, verses 16 through 27. So, never mind. We need to just stay on task. These 5 kings fled and hid themselves in the cave of Makkedah. So it's not going well. And what do the kings do? This is beautiful, right? So, yeah. Sometimes it'll be interesting to see, so the leader of Hamas, what happens when he's captured. Okay? And it was told to Joshua, the 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave of Makkedah. And Joshua said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard them. But do not stay there yourselves. He's going to trap them in there and deal with them some other time. So pursue your enemies, attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter their cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. So the kings are hiding, yet he still has to deal with the armies. So in other words, it's a rout, but there is still some military leadership taking place that has to be dealt with. Okay? But if the kings are hiding, that right there, so... when Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a great blow until they were wiped out, and when the remnant of that remained of them had entered into the fortified cities, and all the people returned safe to Joshua in the camp of Makkedah, not a man moved his tongue against any of the people of Israel. Then Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me from the cave. And they did so, and brought those 5 kings out to him from the cave, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of... So who are these guys? These are the same guys. We can't let the Gibeonites get away with this because it'll destroy everything, right? And then there'll be a whole bunch of defections. And so these are the very guys who kind of thought of this. We need to punish the Gibeonites, and here they are. It all failed. Okay, king of Lachish and the king of Eglon. And when they brought those kings out to Joshua, Joshua summoned all the men of Israel and said to the chiefs of the men of war who had gone with him, come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings. Okay, so what does this show us? I mean, this is a symbolic act. He's not going to... Yeah, that you're vanquished, that I have control over you. And so it could mean that you will be executed, or it could mean I have control over you, and now I will show you mercy and let you go. See? So, but this is an act to say you're completely defeated. Okay? Then they came near and put their feet on their necks. And Joshua said to them, do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous. For thus the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight. And afterward Joshua struck them and put them to death. And he hanged them on 5 trees. And they hung on trees until the evening. So, until the evening, and then of course they lower the bodies. Okay. But the time of the going down of the sun Joshua commanded, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into a cave where they had hidden themselves, and they set large stones against the mouth of the cave, which remain to this very day. Okay, so wow, war is never pretty. Even the best of wars is never pretty. So. And this certainly isn't, but it, yeah. But if you're going to control a place, right? If Israel is really going to control, you can't have Hamas around. You can't say, if they're going to reconstitute, they cannot be around. So, right? It's kind of like cancer. If you go through chemo, you want to get it all. Because if you don't, and it comes back, it's even meaner, right? So, yeah.
I have a hard time understanding why when they say put the sword to everybody in the village, but does this include the women and children?
Yeah, this is, this is, some of this I don't think we'll ever be able to, we'll never be easy with. And and I've read different varying explanations, and theologically I can go, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But as a person, a human, I do have issues with some of this. And but the thing is, I have to recognize God is God, and there are some questions I want to ask him. So in the big scheme of things, what we do see, some examples where God says, get rid of these people, and they don't. And then, there's this ongoing kind of bloodletting that goes on for centuries, which would have not happened.
Well,
So,
you think that maybe it's in the interpretation of it that they didn't really destroy everybody in the village, just the soldiers?
well, some of this could be hyperbole in the sense it's not in the where maybe not every single person, but what we can say for certain is that they are vanquished as a people. That we can say, and it may not be hyperbole. So the only thing I could fall back on is we see some times when, well, we don't want to do that because that's cruel, and and I know this is what God said. And then there's this ongoing blood feud and bloodletting for centuries that goes on. And so we can see that, okay, well, this is horrible, but I'm actually stopping something way, way worse. Now, us, that would be problematic, right?
Still going on.
Because we don't, well, what if we could kill Hitler? But the whole thing is, we don't know, right? I mean, you go, oh, well, does anybody really know that Hitler would turn into such an evil ruler and kill millions of people? No. So it's not like, well, if we get rid of Hitler, right? Now, so God has more foresight, and he didn't do that either. So,
Has to be, God kills all of these people, and yet 10 Commandments come up.
yeah.
You kill, and yet God kills.
Yes. And so, the thing that we have to recognize is that is the word kill, not murder. There is a difference, right? In other words, God says all life is precious. So here we kind of have a complex God who we can't pigeonhole. And that's not surprising because, it's like an ant trying to understand a human, but the divide is much greater,
That
right?
just reminds me
Yeah.
of things that go on in our nation's capital, where you got somebody dictating what you're going to do, and yet, at the same time, they could go out and kill all these people, but but it's okay for them because
Oh,
they made
well,
the rules, I'm just saying,
yeah. Well, I mean,
it's hard for me to,
there is such a thing as what we would call a just war. And yet, even in a just war, bad things happen. So, I mean, I would prefer never to have any.
I'd like to ask God why
But,
he kills and he tells us not to.
So, there is much to know. But really, I mean, just think of what little bit we do get. It's incomprehensible. What does that tell us about God? I mean, his power is incomprehensible. His humility is what we get is we're getting a two-dimensional black and white sliver of a 3D panoramic full color God.
We're just touching the iceberg.
Yes. And so, and I don't see how anybody could go through the book of Joshua and not be disturbed. Because you're like, what? Really, God? And you go, okay, so the big sweep of things, yeah, I get all that. And this just says God is unknowable. And if it wasn't for Jesus, completely unknowable. But at least he makes God knowable to us in a way that we could relate to. Okay? So, anyways, what ends up happening through is that God gives Israel and Joshua the victory. And in fact, as we make our way through, of course, page 4, devote to destruction, karam, is repeatedly used, emphasizing the totality of Israel's victories. Okay, so this is huge, and yeah, it's not pretty. Okay, but through this, what we learn is we learn of God's power, but also His faithfulness to His people. See, so we kind of see two sword edges of God. And again, if we look at this, okay, well, what does this tell us spiritually, right? If we're gonna throw the new covenant mantle on this, well, this is what God does for us, for those who are what? Part of His covenant. See? Now, that's not the case if you say, well, thank you, God, but I'm on my own, and there you are. So we'll stop here and we'll continue on. But yeah, those are good observations, Don. And it's yeah. And I think we have to be honest and just say, because that's in the text, and I'm not going to try to explain it away. But and there's still more stuff to come, and so I will theologically delve into some of it. But if you as a human just go, yeah, but I still can't, then I think you'll be there, and just have to say, okay, I'll just set this aside and still trust in God and know that He is still God. But there's some things that I just can't reconcile completely. And of course we can't, because God is beyond us. And He's operating in a world that's totally messy, and He allows it to be messy. Because otherwise, if He didn't, He would just have to, right? What would God have to do to totally clean everything up? Well, He would just have to kill us all. Because sin is so bad, you can't reform it. It has to be killed. And how do we know that? Well, who died to show us this? Yeah. So there are certain things that we can know. And so it's into this whole kind of cesspool that God comes and interacts. And the sinless actually becomes sinful in Jesus. And we have to be okay with that too. Okay? Otherwise, He wouldn't have saved us. Let's stop here because it is Epiphany, at least yesterday was. And let's make our way and get ready for this service, okay? Our Father, there is much stuff in Joshua that's hard and disturbing. And yet, we must recognize that You are God and that You are working in all this total chaos and mess of our making, and yet You still turn good out of it. It's beyond our comprehension as to how, and yet we know this is true because we only need to look to Jesus' life to see this is so. Give us such faith all our days. And for what we don't understand about You, give us peace in our hearts that we may believe in You, if in our days You do not unveil to us things we may never understand. In our Savior's name we pray. Amen.